Welcome to the regular meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. I will call the roll call. Commissioner Hyan.
Here.
Commissioner Hare.
Here.
Commissioners Keene and Andrews have been excused from tonight's meeting, so everybody is accounted for. Item number 2, public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda. Does anyone wish to make public comment? Seeing no response, we will turn to item number 3, hearing on the merits in re ethics complaint number 19-131115 in the matter of Lynette Suite and Lynette Suite for Supervisor 2010. Respondents.
Chair Rennie, Jesse Minority, Acting Executive Director. This is the matter where the respondent had requested a continuance by 30 days that you had granted them for next month. So we have taken that off. Well, you can take it off calendar, I should say. So
that'll be on the agenda for October 26th.
Unless the parties were to settle. That's correct. And even in that case, there might, well, yeah.
Okay, we'll go to item number 4. Presentation by information technology.
Public comment on item 3 before you move on.
All right.
The request, David Pilpel speaking as an individual, the request to continue the matter, there weren't copies of that made available or the granting of that. Was that done administratively?
There is an email sent by the respondent's attorney to staff. Staff communicated that to the chair. The chair granted that, and then there was a response. I'm not sure if that was done via email or not, but.
All right, maybe I can get copies of that at some point. If the regulations don't already so provide, it seems to me that a request for continuance like that should have been made earlier on, that if it occurred after the agenda had already been prepared and disseminated, that the matter should have been heard on the merits. So if there is a deadline to make such a continuance request, I think that should be moved up to at least a week before the meeting so things don't get put on the calendar and then pulled off like this.
All right.
I think there may be such rule, but the chair always has the discretion to continue it in the interest of justice. I mean,
and we're in favor of the interest of justice. That's good. Okay, on the merits, and I'm sure I'm not sure. If we hear this again, there'll be further opportunity for comment, but it seems to me, and I have not reviewed the file on the matter, that the respondent was an elected official on the BART board, was a serious candidate for the Board of Supervisors, apparently did not file certain reports, and so I think that there is a great public interest. Although she did not get elected in this case, I think there's a great public interest in enforcement here. I don't think this is one that just warrants a slap on the wrist. So I hope, and I'm sure that the staff and the commission are taking this seriously and will in the fullness of time. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, item 4, presentation by Information Technology Officer Stephen Massey regarding pending changes to the Commission's website. Steve?
Jesse Minority, Acting Executive Director. I'm just going to introduce Stephen and just let the Commission know that one of the real strengths of the Commission is its electronic presence and its presence online, and a lot of the great sort of infographics and the material that we make available both to folks looking to comply, members of the public just looking for information, and then people looking for data about the reports that are filed, whether it's campaign, lobbying, etc. One of the challenges, though, with that is that we have so much information, and our current website, which was designed a number of years ago, is a little busy. For lack of a better word. So at the beginning of this year, one of the things that staff undertook with Stephen as the lead is a revamp of the website with a couple of goals in mind, and he'll tell you about it. But one is to make it more user friendly so that folks looking for information can find it. Folks looking to learn how to comply can find it, and then folks looking for information about particular elections can find that information. And one of the major things was switching from sort of just a website that had a lot of information stored in various PDFs that people download to sort of a more modern website where the information appears right on the screen. So he'll tell you a little bit about that, but that was started earlier this year, and we've gotten to the point where essentially the main sort of framework and the majority of the actual content is basically done. We need some tweaking to sort of launch it. So it's probably not going to happen immediately, but we want to get that out there for you and the public to see. And so I'll give it to Stephen.
Okay. So again, I'm Stephen Massey. So I'm going to give you a little preview of the website that I've been working on over the course of the past year. This is actually, I'm sorry about this presentation on this computer screen. It's sort of like looking at artwork on an Atari, but it is what it is. So you have to use your imagination to a certain extent. This is the existing website, sfethics.org. This is what the homepage that people get to when they come to the website. It was launched in 2009. And it has, at this point, over 4,300 pages on the site. And it's all being stored in what is now an obsolete content management system. It is still being maintained by the company that we're working with, but it's not being actively developed, and I do have some concerns about the future of the company. Knowing that this is a project that would take us easily a year plus to reorganize, we started on this about a year ago to try and move it to a new system. To give you an idea of what things looked like in 2009, 100%, when I look back at our data from back then, 100% of our users were on a desktop PC. I couldn't even find one mobile user. Popular sections of the site, as has always been the case, is our e-filing system. Most people come to our site to file electronic forms. They're also coming to our site to look at laws and advice. They were downloading paper forms. They were viewing the disclosure forms that had been filed, and then they were also looking at information about the commission, such as agendas, minutes, and information about the commissioners. And at the time, we had only 3 electronic campaign forms. We were in the process of launching 2 more. We had optional electronic form 700 filings, so we had maybe less than 20 people filed electronically. And we had campaign finance data that was available in spreadsheets and PDFs that could be downloaded. But largely, we were still what I would consider to be a paper-based office. Most information was available in our file cabinets in our office. And if you jump ahead to July of 2015, now 1 in 10 of our users are on a mobile device. So it's lower than the rest of, I would say, the sort of general web community. But it's enough that if 1 in 10 of your users are looking at a website that they essentially can't read on a mobile device, it's becoming a problem. The sections that are popular now has changed over time. Still, the e-filing system is the most popular section of the site, but in the campaign finance data and visualizations, that didn't even exist in 2009, and that's now the second most accessed section. Again, still laws and advice, and then the campaign finance manuals, the lobbyist data and visualizations. There wasn't even electronic lobbyist reporting back in 2009, and then the lobbyist manuals. Now we have 14 electronic campaign forms, which includes the entire public financing program, which has recently switched to electronic filing, so that will be in place for the 2016 election. We have electronic form 700, electronic lobbyist reporting and registration. You can pay settlements, late fees, registration fees online. We take electronic signatures on campaign statements, so you can actually just sign your statements online. You don't have to file paper copies anymore. If you have training requirements, you can complete those online by watching online videos. We have open data sets and programming interfaces for people who want to tap into the databases that we have for their own projects. We have data visualizations. And then we have these additional mandates, which have come into place in the past 6 years. For instance, permit consultants, electronic lobbyist reporting, major developer reporting, and we just sort of tacked it onto the existing site because there wasn't a really good way in the existing content management system to organize things. So what else is missing on the site? Over time, we've come to see certain areas that can be improved. One thing we don't have on the site is we don't have a section for enforcement, and we only have one page dedicated to complaints and how to file a complaint. So we wanted to build out that section. We don't really have step-by-step compliance information that includes registration and filing. So what we provide people right now is a printable manual and a list of forms they need to download. But at this point, I think most people expect to get to a website and have a step-by-step in what they need to complete to comply with the various disclosure requirements. We also don't outline the audit process. So we do notify people on the website when their committee has been selected for audit, but we don't detail on the website what happens next. And I think that there's some value to people understanding if they're going to be selected for audit, what might happen after that and what is to be expected. We also don't have a really clear site navigation on the site with breadcrumbs, and we'll go over this all in a minute. But the result is that when we tack on new features, it just becomes very cluttered, and there are a lot of things on the home page. And the last thing is that it's actually difficult to print for those who still use printers. When you print content on the page, it often cuts off sides of the page. It's very difficult to look at. So we want to address that as well. So this is the new page. Again, it's a little hard to see on this screen, but later you can take a look at it when we've got it posted online. And we've taken away a lot of the choices on the page based on the data that we've collected over the past 6 years. So oftentimes when we're speaking to people on the phone, even when we have them on the phone with us and we tell them where on the page to look for the link, they often can't find the link. So we really reduced the number of choices. So at the top, we've also tried to make the website perform similar to most websites that you'd go to, so there's a certain expectation of the interface. So we've added a login button at the top to get into your account to file all your forms, and that appears on every single page of the site. We've reduced the number of site sections to 5. We've added this section of the page here where we can pin something important to look at. So for instance, this is right before the election, so we have the data visualizations that pertain to this election. But you can imagine before Form 700 is due, we would pin the information that's relevant to filing Form 700 right on the home page. We've also added these 4 quick links, which I'll go over in a second, that allow you to jump into sections deeper within the site that we feel are the most frequently accessed sections of the website. Down here, you can't even read it, but it does have, on the left is about the commission. In the center, we've reduced the news section of our site down from 3 sections to 1, so we're going to have one place for people to get their news. We've added the interested persons list form right to the home page, so you just enter your email address right on our home page and hit subscribe. That will fire off an email to your email account to verify that you actually own that account, and then you'll be on the list. It's about as easy as we can make that. But in general, we also have our social media sites linked at the bottom there, and most people at this point tend to get their information from our social media pages. There's about 14 times as many people on our Twitter page getting news than our IP list at this point. On the bottom, we've removed the contact page on our site and just added the contact information at the bottom of every single page. If you click the address at the bottom of the page and you're on a phone, it'll actually give you the directions to our office from your current location. Tap the telephone number, it'll dial our office. So again, this is a little hard to see, but this is one of the internal pages. And on the side, we've actually added site navigation, which doesn't exist right now, which allows you to sort of see what level you're at on the site. Sort of a zoomed-in version of that. This is the page for campaign finance disclosure information, such as our data visualizations and the forms that we have. And while we updated the site, we also took the opportunity to update the technical features on the site. None of these features are particularly revolutionary in the IT world, but it does bring us up with current technology. So one thing we wanted to address was making the site responsive to your device size. So if you're on a cell phone, you can actually read the content versus if you're on a larger screen. I'll go over these in a minute. But we added those quick entry points. We changed the site navigation and built a site navigation for if you're on a phone. We added breadcrumbs, and we also added the ability to print pages on letterhead. We also reorganized the site, and we spent a lot of time not only reorganizing the content, but making sure that as much content that is on the site right now that the links will not be broken. So most content that's on there, for instance, if you had linked to an audit report from 5 years ago, that link will still work on the new site. We've also added this new enforcement section, and we have a complete walkthrough of the complaint process. So what happened with that is Jesse approached UC Hastings, and the same professor who worked with the students on the lobbyist fact sheets, and they worked on a simplified process for what happens when a complaint is filed. That way, instead of looking at the enforcement and investigations regulations document, which is currently available, this is a little more user-friendly. We've also detailed the audit process so you know what to expect if you're selected for audit. We also created these compliance walkthroughs. So every section of the site now, instead of having different ways of organizing the information, every section, if you're a lobbyist or a candidate or a permit consultant, we structure the content such that there's, for instance, does this disclosure requirement apply to me? What are the registration requirements? What are the training requirements? And if there is training requirements, we show them the video right on the page. And then we added that interested person sign up on the home page. So to give you an idea of the device size, I know it's kind of hard to see on here, but imagine you had a really large screen. The current website would take up just a fraction of the page, and then you end up with all this wasted space. And the result of having all this wasted space is if you're looking at the data visualizations or the sort of spreadsheet content that we have on our site, you're very limited and constrained in what you can see at a time. And then if you're on a small device, like a cell phone, I can tell you that the website is completely unreadable. I don't know if any of you have tried it before, but it's microscopic. So now what happens if you go to the site on a cell phone versus a larger device, the site will reformat the content and the font sizes so that you can actually read the content regardless of what device you're using. So here, it's, on this screen it's a little hard to see anything, but on the left is the agenda for the August 4th special committee hearing, and it's sized appropriately for a cell phone. And on the right is the current site, same content, but you would need a magnifying glass to look at it. So these quick entry points, we put them on the home page. We took a look at our data, and really people come to the site for three main reasons. There's people looking to get guidance, such as informal or formal advice, looking at our publications and trainings. So that's the first link there. The second link is to file statements. So if you need to e-file your Form 700, your campaign statements, your lobbyist reports. The third link is to view the disclosure forms. So this is just viewing the content that's been filed by people and the various data sets that are available. And then we've added a fourth link, which we don't have the data to support because we didn't actually have a complete section on the site, but we now have that file a complaint button, and there you can see the complete complaint process on our website. We've also reduced the number of categories on the site in the sort of table of contents down to 5 different sections. There's now a commission section, which has, again, the agendas, minutes, information about the members of the commission. And we've also added a staff page. We know it can be frustrating when you need to contact a government agency and you don't know which staff person is responsible for a particular area. So we've added a staff page so people can see that. We've added a compliance page that has all the compliance walkthroughs. We've added the disclosure section that has all of our data sets, all of the forms that have been filed. And then we have the new enforcement section, which includes complaints, audits. We have non-filer information, late filers, paying your fees. And then the laws section, which has our advice and all the laws that are pertinent to the Ethics Commission. And then on the side, we have these site navigation menus. So you can see here, for instance, this person has chosen the candidates page, which is under the campaign section. And from there, they can see there's additional content they can read, such as running for office, running the campaign, reporting and record keeping, and then what to do after the campaign, because they still have reporting obligations that oftentimes are overlooked by candidates. We've added a mobile menu. You've probably seen this on, if you use a cell phone, you've probably seen this on many websites. Tap a little menu button and out slides the table of contents on your mobile phone. We've added breadcrumbs to the top of the page. This has actually been requested a number of times by people I've spoken to on the phone to tell you what level you're at in the site hierarchy, and so you could jump up a level and have an understanding of where you are on that page. And lastly, we have this print. You can't even see it on here, but there is a print sheet. All the content fits on the page on letterhead. So I'm just going to pull up the site here. So this is the new site, and again, right now we're pinning the data visualizations. The data visualizations this year, compared to the previous years, now will scale whether you're on a cell phone up to a large screen monitor. So if you're on a cell phone and you're interested in this information, you can check it at any time. We're showing here the summary information for all the campaigns. We have contributor information. So you can search the contributors, and you can see the different contribution levels that each contributor is making in comparison to the other contributors for that particular race. We have maps that are showing the support for each candidate in each zip code within the city. And we're also tracking, for instance, late contributions. This is one of the tools we came up with last year to sort of help cut out the noise as far as late contributions, because late contributions, you're seeing tens of them every single day. So what this does is allows you to pinpoint, for instance, a particularly large contribution that may have come in. So in this case, you can see here there's one contribution that's in the $4 million range, and then all the other contributions here combined are within $100,000 per day. So going back to the home page here, if we click to file a complaint, right now on our current website, if you click to file a complaint, what you would get is you could download the form and the regulations document. And what we have here is a brief introduction about filing a complaint, and then we have the section here that you can read about the complaint process. So there's the complaint preparation, submission, preliminary review, investigation of the complaint, stipulated orders, including settlements, and probable cause, and hearings on the merit. So if you click on one of these, we provide people with important information before filing the complaints, questions that you should be asking, such as who do you believe is breaking the law, what laws are they violating, what facts support your allegations, when did the alleged violations take place, and so on. And instead of providing people with the code sections that are within the jurisdiction of the commission, we actually write out the different areas of law that can be investigated by the commission in plain English. Just to go over one more section, so filing statements right now, I'm sure all of you have at least gone through the Form 700 process. And if you go to register under Form 700, there's maybe 20-something links that you can browse through. And we've distilled this down to a pretty simple page. To get started, you choose the type of filer that you are, and that will take you to the registration information. Once you've done that, you can go to the second column, which is to e-file. and probably the most popular page on our website, which is to reset your password. And then the third section here is to e-sign your documents if you're a campaign. So when we're ready to send this out, we'll do that, and happy to take any questions this time.
Well, first of all, great job. And I look forward to it actually being operational. But I'm wondering, I'm remembering the presentation that those students made, a year ago?
Right.
Something like that. So they had great graphics, which they used for the things that they worked on. Now, has their work been incorporated into the website, or is that a completely separate issue or operation?
So that was a separate project. We linked to their content so people can find it.
Okay.
But they actually rely on those application programming interfaces that I talked about. So we've actually added the documentation for each of those programming interfaces right on our website so that people can easily find them. Because one of the things that happened when we initially met with them was they had a little trouble finding the information of just how the information is structured and what they should be looking at. So we try to improve that area of the website.
So when this new website is operational, we'll be able to link to the work that they've done. Is that correct?
Yes.
And presumably those charts are being, continually updated with information that they created, the charts and the graphs, or, all the graphics that they had?
Yeah, as long as they continue to maintain their site. The graphics
So does it depend on them, or are our own people now updating those graphics?
It depends on them if they want to continue to maintain their site. But we continue to maintain the data that they're relying on, and we keep that up to date. And then the graphics that we have on our site are going to be continued to be maintained.
Okay, so at some point we might not be, when we link to them, we would not, it's possible that we would not be linking to the graphics that they created. Is that what you're saying, if they decide that they don't want to keep that up or maintain it?
Right, they could pull it down at any time.
Okay,
It's really up to them.
So we can't depend on them?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Just like to echo Commissioner Haon's sentiments. I mean, great work. Thank you for doing this. Did you use a vendor to help you do this?
We've spent a little less than $300 on the project.
Well done.
Wow.
and our time.
You're right, of course.
Does that come out of our budget?
The $300?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there, maybe talking in the future, but have we explored the possibility of getting some contributions from either computer companies or our high-tech people to underwrite all these changes that we want to make? I mean, particularly and possibly even from the city, when they burden us with the website having all the 700s, it seemed to me we should start thinking about maybe there are sources to underwrite the costs of our website.
Are you suggesting that we boost Mr. Massey's salary since he basically did all the work?
Perhaps Friends of Ethics would like to raise funds for the Ethics Commission. It would be nice if we, could get some.
Anyway, I agree with what everybody said. I think it's tremendous what you're doing, and it'll be a great public service.
I'm sorry?
When will it be operational?
I expect sometime early next year. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I will be on paternity leave starting in November, so there will be a slight break in the project. But when I come back, I expect we'll get it up. In the meantime, Mr. Shen is unaware of this, but he's going to have to read all this new content on the site before I get back.
Well, congratulations
Thanks.
on the upcoming addition to your family as well.
Thanks.
Great, congratulations.
I guess any public comment on this particular item?
David Pilpel, as an individual, just want to appreciate all of Stephen's work. You see him every so often at the commission, but he does great work behind the scenes every day. The website, the data, public records, all kinds of things. Stephen is one of the great things at the commission. And I would point out, as you asked about the money, other city departments have updated their websites and engaged consultants and spent thousands of dollars and done I don't know what. This was basically Stephen on his own time, well, on city time, but on his own, figuring out what needed to be done and doing it and not spending $1 gazillion. So I think the commission really is a model for the city in terms of updating its website. And he's been very responsive to me on my occasional questions. The one thing that I was thinking about in terms of enforcement, the current chart that lists past stipulations is a bit hard to navigate and doesn't show the respondent's name. If at a minimum there could be a field added to show the respondent's name where there was a matter settled and there's a stipulation, it would be a lot easier to figure out who was at issue. Some of the stipulation file names are coded, so they're like stip 0915, and you have to go into the stip to see who it was, and it's just very difficult. So just adding that field of who the respondent was, if it was made public, would be helpful. Thanks very much.
Hello, Larry Bush for Friends of Ethics. And if you'll provide us with the budget needs, we'll try and see what we can do from Friends of Ethics to raise money for you.
My goodness.
I did mention...
He only says that because Stephen said $300.
Well, actually, I'm prepared to offer $1 million. But it's not my money. It's from the controller. I had a meeting with the controller about their ability to create a very robust system of electronic filing and their ability to tie that into the needs of the Ethics Commission. And I know that he's planning on having a conversation with the Commission, with Chair Rennie. He was mentioning specifically the ability to exchange information on everything from contractors to campaign contributions, to filers, people who are on boards of directors, all the kinds of things that you would normally be required to review if you were doing an audit or an investigation. And the fact is that the controller has about $2 million a year that it returns back to the city because it has not yet been able to identify a legal way of meeting it under the bond obligation thing. But they do think that they can do that with this program. So I'm hopeful that those conversations will go forward, and I will take a small percentage of that. When this does go forward, I hope that one of the things that you can do is create enough flexibility so that you can search among things like behest payments and travel and so forth to see people who have city business and whether they're also making behest payments at the request of an official or travel gifts or whatever else it may be. And as was just mentioned in terms of enforcement cases, your system now for 700s allows you to go in and hit a button for non-filers, and you can see who's not filed. The only way you can see who's not paid on a penalty is if you go into the executive director's report, and then he will list in there who's got pending charges. But I think if you do have a system where people can search what it is in terms of compliance, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Mincer. Just a quick comment if it wasn't brought up before I arrived, actually. Currently, on the current website, advice letters are not searchable. You can't search the names of the advice letters, nor can you search the content within them. A search function on that, because now you have to basically go through this list that's on the website, and the description of the title is usually not very helpful. So a search function for advice letters, I'm assuming all the attorneys in this room would very much appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Eileen Hansen. I just had one question, and it refers to Mr. Massey commenting that he had some concern about the viability of the company that you've been working with. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little more about that and address whether we should be working with a company that may not survive and what's our backup plan if they don't. Just a little more detail on that. Thank you.
So the company that we're hosting with right now is called TypePad, although they're not called TypePad anymore. It was a San Francisco company that DT was considering contracting with for the entire city website. We piloted the system, and then TypePad backed out of the contract negotiations with the city. But we were allowed to continue with them, and it was fine for a while, and then they were bought out, I think, twice. And the company that owns them now still maintains the system, but it doesn't develop it anymore. And so this time when we moved to a content management system, we moved to a system that really is portable and could be moved to other vendors if the vendor that we're using right now goes out of business. So it wouldn't take us very long to get the site up again. Hope that addresses the concern.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we will turn to item 5, discussion and possible action regarding commission activity relating to its expenditure lobbyist ballot measure Prop C. There isn't really too much to add other than that Executive Director Minardi and myself have attended a number of meetings since our last commission meeting, and also Friends of Ethics has been active in responding to invitations for speakers who can advocate, and overwhelmingly, at least my experience has been that the various clubs seem supportive of Proposition C. As you probably saw over the weekend, the Chronicle came out in support of it, and the editorial, I thought, answered and responded to some of the criticisms that have been raised by those who are opponents. Any public discussion on 5?
Larry Bush for Friends of Ethics. I'd like to note that we now have 3 current and former mayors who have endorsed Prop C, and that's Mayor Lee, Dianne Feinstein, and Art Agnos, as well as about 5 members of the Board of Supervisors. One issue that has consistently arisen are concerns from the unions. And I think it would be helpful if the Commission would direct that a fact sheet be put together, a simple fact sheet that explains how Prop C affects unions, that it doesn't affect their ability to do collective bargaining, doesn't affect their ability to talk to members, and doesn't affect their discussions on workplace conditions. When I have met with the political directors of at least one union and explained it, they said that really allayed their concerns. But since what I'm suggesting is essentially a fact sheet and not an advocacy piece, I think if it came from the Commission itself and was provided to members of the Board of Supervisors, all of them, not just the ones who have endorsed it, as well as to the Labor Council, would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Pilpel again, speaking as an individual. Just to follow up on what Larry suggested, if you do pursue that approach, I would also suggest a similar fact sheet for nonprofit organizations covering what they would be required to disclose, both in member communications and other communications not to members, just to clarify their obligations. And I think both of these fact sheet ideas could relate to the measure that's proposed now, but ultimately could be fact sheets used for the ordinance if adopted. Thanks.
Thank you. Item 6, discussion and possible action regarding the commission's search for a new executive director. The search committee met on Friday of this past week to review the applications that have been received up to the cutoff date of September 11th, and made the decision that they would not reopen, that in the week between Labor Day and September 11th, we received a significant number of well-qualified candidates, and that the feeling was that there was not a need for reopening the process. The recruiting, the Alliance Associates flagged 11 names that they felt were highly qualified candidates, and in our meeting on Friday, we narrowed down to the invitations will go out for an interview on October 14th to 5 candidates who appear to be the strongest, with the hope that out of those 5, we'll be in a position following the interviews to submit to the full commission, hopefully by the 26th of October, but that may be overly optimistic. The names of candidates and to have those candidates interviewed by the commission with the hope that a selection can be made. Is any public comment on that item?
David Pilpel again as an individual. I appreciate, again, your continued transparency on this process. So if I understand correctly, you're down to 5 currently, although you could revisit some of the others. What I didn't hear was how many total applications you received. I'm just interested in that number, not any of the names.
It was in the 30s.
Okay.
And they were applications from almost all geographical areas
Here, there, and everywhere.
of the country.
Great.
So there was no reason to believe that it didn't get wide circulation.
Excellent. And I'm pleased that you're satisfied that there's a sufficient applicant pool, didn't need to be reopened, and we're down to 5 for the moment. Great. Thank you very much.
In this type of process, is there maybe a subsequent essay requirement? In other words, that you might pose questions to the applicants in writing if later thoughts come to mind? I don't know how the process would work if you would expect on the middle of October to interview by Skype, which I understand is the mechanism you're going to be using, and then you might actually follow up with questions to be addressed by each applicant, maybe about their specific background, or would you plan to call them back on the phone? I don't exactly know how that process might work.
The way it is contemplated now is that the applicant will be provided in advance with the invitation, I think 3 or 4 questions which we want them to respond to, and we're sending them in advance so that they have plenty of time to give thoughtful consideration to their answers so that we get not an off-the-cuff answer, but and these are questions that call for specific examples of certain areas, so it's not the kind where they could go on Google and get information. It's more then we have, I think it's down to about 13 sort of core questions out of which we intend to interrogate and interview the candidates on. and it's contemplated that at the full commission, there will be other questions for the commission so that there isn't necessarily a rehash of what we heard when we first met with them.
So your initial interview will be with the committee or the subcommittee,
Correct.
2 individuals,
Right.
and then it's open to the commission as a body to look at your findings or your recommendations or your thoughts. And then if the other commissioners have questions, you might get back to the applicant. Is that it?
The present process is that the committee meets with the 5 that we have identified as being the strongest candidates, and assuming, following our interview, that we believe there are 2 or 3 or maybe even 5 that we want to leave it to the commission to interview. So we would, in those instances, and I think our present contemplation is, those will be face-to-face interviews.
Oh, face-to-face.
With the commission. Our interviews and the initial interviews for the 5 are going to be by Skype or some such process.
Got it.
But even candidates who are local are not going to be interviewed personally. They're going to be interviewed the same way so that everybody's on an equal footing insofar as how those interviews are conducted.
That's the initial electronic
Right.
means, yeah.
And then when we get to the meeting of the full commission where the search committee presents to them the 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it may be, candidates who we recommend they ought to select out of that, there will be personal interviews with the commission, and the commission will then act as a whole.
And that'll, of course, be a closed process.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
At an undisclosed location. Although I should tell you, we are required to notice it, and if it's, say, at our October 26th meeting, when we go into closed session, we'll go somewhere else.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's how it's going to work?
Yes. Pardon me?
That's how it's going to work?
Yes. Yes, sir, you should, we have been told that, for example, our meeting on the 14th will be noticed as a public meeting with a notation, with an indication that we're going to go to closed session, and we will go to there will be a public meeting, and we will then vote to go to closed session, and then when we get done with that, we'll come back to the public session and decide whether or not we want to disclose anything.
I suggest the top of the mark. It's very nice.
Pardon me?
Top of the mark.
I like that idea.
Okay. Yes.
Commissioners, just to follow up on that, so the recommendation will come to the commission on the 26th, hopefully, and possibly you'll be interviewing people at that meeting as well?
We may.
Okay.
That's to be decided, and that's why I say that may be too quick, and it may be that we'll want to set a special commission or full commission meeting sometime in November rather than wait till the regular meeting for purposes of the final interviews by the full commission and selection.
But it's possible that the committee would recommend to the commission for the meeting on the 26th and bring the candidates to that meeting.
Yes.
In case you decide to interview as a body that evening.
Correct.
Okay. I had one other question, which is, as you know, Chair Rennie, I made a recommendation that the committee open itself to a member or more of the public to help in the process. And I'm just curious if the committee made a decision about whether you want to do that or not.
Mm-hmm. The committee's recommendation was that we not open the process to add additional members of the committee because of the fact that it would delay the process. Now, I should say, for the record, there was a suggestion made, as Ms. Hance has indicated, that we should include at least some representative of the stakeholders in this kind of a process. And I pointed out that if that recommendation had been made before we started the process, or before the commission selected its committee, there would have been an open discussion with the full commission, and the commission could have made that determination. But I'll entertain any discussion or any comments that any commissioners have on her suggestion that you ought to, as a commission, we ought to add some additional members of the selection committee, either at this process or in the future.
If I could just add, I would appreciate a conversation about that, but my recommendation at this point would be just that the process leading to the commission then interviewing the candidates be opened, so that you've narrowed it down to 5, and if you could include a member of the public in the interviews with those 5, that then leads to a recommendation to the commission as to whether or not to interview 5 or 3 or 4, however many. At that point, the stakeholder would be inserted. So I don't see it slowing down the process.
And she did indicate a commitment of confidentiality to whoever gets added. In other words, to the same level of confidentiality that we as commissioners have. Good.
You know, my reaction to that is, I can see where it's coming from. I think one of the reasons we've gone through this lengthy process is to make sure the public has a lot of say in the types of things we're asking and the types of things we're looking for. I do, however, think it is the Commission's responsibility to make this higher, and that it would be best for the Commission to sort of maintain that. The other thing is a practical concern. I could think of a lot of good people who could be that one person, but who we choose is going to say, other people are not going to be maybe happy with that, and I think it adds a level of complexity that we shouldn't add at this point.
Understandable, and if I could just clarify, I was not suggesting that a person or two involved make a decision, just provide feedback so that obviously the Commission is the body that makes the decision.
Emotionally, I like the idea, but practically it seems fraught, because the issue is then who are the members of the public that are chosen, and what if the viewpoints are all over the place and very much in conflict with perhaps what the commissioners or the committee that initially interviews the candidates. I just see that becoming a difficult situation or creating conflict where we don't want conflict. But maybe we can figure out some way to include some feedback from the public, but I'm just not quite sure at this moment what that would look like. I mean, I don't see it as someone being on the interview committee. because again, who is that one person that is going to be picked? And that in itself could be full of conflict and discussion and controversy. And I think, if anything, we're trying to get to a point where maybe there isn't so much conflict between decisions at the commission level and the public. But perhaps if we put our creative thinking caps on, we might find a way to accommodate at least the idea of involvement on the part of certainly the people who are interested in what goes on at the commission. So sympathetic, but not quite sure how that should be implemented.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 7.
I just want to make one comment, if I may. If you're thinking about something as close to the election as October 26th, I recommend that you consider actually making a decision after the election is over, because the election will tell you something about the direction the public sees the commission going in. It will give you some information that you don't have otherwise. It will also have an effect on what the responsibilities will be for the new executive director as well as for the commission. Since it's only be another week past October 26th to have that discussion, it seems like it's a worthwhile delay. Thank you.
All right.
I will say, Chair Rennie, if we do schedule it for another day, that we try to get that on calendar as soon as possible, given that it'll probably take some time, and calendars, especially in November, are hectic.
I didn't follow. Schedule what?
If we're going to schedule, as Mr. Bush suggested, interviews for the commission to interview candidates,
right,
I would like to do that as soon as possible, because if I find out on October 26th that you want to do interviews on November 3rd, that's probably not going to work for me.
No. We will, as I say, we will try and do it. Assuming we get to that point, we'll try and do it on the calendar on the 26th. If we don't, then at the 26th meeting, we can either decide to wait till November, end of November, or to have a special meeting.
Great.
Turning to number 7, discussion and possible action on the Commission's August 24th, 2015 draft meeting minutes. Any comments or suggestions on those minutes? I haven't asked for public comment yet. I will wait and see what Commission members. Hearing none, any public comment?
David Pilpel, sorry to be premature. Just 2 suggestions this time. On page 2, the 3rd paragraph, Ms. Puri's comments. I think it would clarify to add the 2 words "this year" after "is the most heated one." It doesn't do much, but it clarifies a little bit. And on page 4...
I wouldn't make that change.
All right.
Yes? No? Okay. And on page 4, the big paragraph about the closed session, if there's a way to tie the comings and goings to the 3 specific matters in closed session, it's not clear, for example, which matters acting executive director minority did or did not participate in. So if you can say somehow related to items 1, 2, or 3, and then somebody left and somebody came in.
Right.
Again, I'm not seeking to determine what occurred, just
I understand.
who was there. Okay, thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion with those corrections?
I move to approve with the additional information about who was present at closed session, but without changing the comments of another public member.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted unanimously. Let's turn to number 8, discussion of the acting executive director's report. Mr. Minardi.
Thank you, Chair Rennie. I would just point out a couple of items, in particular that item number 1, that the Commission is dispersing a lot of funds and public funds in connection with the District 3 election. So at the time it was $207,000. That's now been up to $245,000. That's good. It's good that folks are using the public financing system. I did want to jump to number 10 and publicly recognize Malika Aleem, who is our campaign finance assistant, who is known by folks for, she worked at our front desk, was a really wonderful person with very warm and welcoming. She has left to take another position with the city, so I wanted to recognize her for all of the good work, and she will be missed. She's a very nice person. And then finally, with outreach and education, as Chair Rennie has stated, Chair Rennie primarily, but also me, we have been attending various endorsement meetings. And then we also did send out, we've been trying to take into account the comments about our interested persons list. So we've been accumulating emails, and we sent out the first of what we hope is a series of emails to political clubs, unions, nonprofits, PACs, that sort of thing, basically soliciting and asking folks to sign up for the interested persons list or to follow us on Twitter. As Stephen pointed out, we have over 1,400 followers on Twitter, which is where a lot of folks get their information these days. We sent out about, I think, 65 or 66 invitations, and we had 6 responses. So 6 people signed up for the IP list. So we plan to do some more in the future, and that's primarily it. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you to you and the chair for going to all these meetings, and I know it's been a lot, and with the whole selection process as well for the chair. It's above the call, and thank you.
I have a question about all of those presentations. Any color commentary that you'd like to share with us about those meetings and the interest of the public?
Well, I think they're all a little nonplussed. Because most of them will say, Commissioner Rennie is here in favor of because they always introduce either in favor or contrary, pro or con. And I have to always start off and tell them, no, I'm not here in that role. And I'm not sure that they fully appreciate the restrictions, but I would say that most of them have been relatively friendly, but because of the speech we give at the beginning of what our limited role is, it's really not very dramatic.
But you find that people are interested in the topic and want to discuss it with you?
Yeah.
Or are they just being polite and listening?
No, they will ask questions and comment and make comments and seem interested in the idea of greater transparency. Any public comment on the acting executive director's report?
David Pilpel again. I also wanted to appreciate Malika, wonderful person in the office. She will be missed. She did accept another city position, so it's not like she's going away too far. And on item 12, the language access ordinance, I assume that written update is not yet finalized?
No,
okay.
not yet.
But when it is, I look forward to getting that towards the end of this week. Thank you.
Any other? All right. Turning to item 9, which usually is at the very end, but as you may have gathered from the fact that we've changed the order a little bit on this because of the item 10 is a closed session, save the public need to stay around for some of these items. But any commissioners have, or anybody in the public have suggestions for items for future meetings? I had one, and I've talked to Mr. Bernardi about it, is when you look at our enforcement process, when a complaint comes in, the steps that take place make the procedure a procedure that goes for at least 2-3 months. And when you have an election campaign and there is an alleged complaint of a violation, there isn't usually time for the commission to act to try and correct either the misinformation that may be out there because the complainant may have put it in Mateer and Ross or something, what their complaint is, and because we haven't gotten to the process quickly enough. I wonder whether we ought not to take a look at whether there is some way in which we could set up a mechanism that for complaints that relate to alleged violations within, say, the 60 days before the election, that we have some special procedure to be able to deal with them, either to correct the misperception or to, if in fact there is an egregious violation, that the public knows about it before it makes its vote. Now, I don't know the city attorney will have to weigh in on it, but I just think it's a worthwhile subject for a future meeting.
I agree, Chair Rennie. I wholeheartedly agree that we should think about that and look into it. There are lots of complexities, I think, because an allegation, that we don't, have a chance to really fully vet, and if it gets out there and we say that we put our imprimatur on that, we could change an election in a bad way.
Right.
But I do understand the concern and agree that it's legitimate, and I'm happy to help working on it.
Public comment?
Mr. Chair, specific to your thought, it seems some easy advance work could be done in advance of that meeting where that would be on the agenda, and that is to ascertain if our sister agencies in the United States have ever established such a process or contemplated such a process, and it's possible that somewhere that mechanism exists. Bob Stern would know, Kogel might know, but then you could also, check with the individual agencies.
Well, and part of the requirements that extend our time are by ordinance. So that we can't do it by regulation. It's just simply a matter of, and I think that Executive Director Minardi, when we talked about it, said that the FPPC tends to give priority or to accelerate their investigation in that when it's an item that might relate to an oncoming election. But it's just, I just don't know what the limitations are on it.
They may have a procedure, and then they may have fleshed out what the legal requirements would be to be judicious.
David Pilpel again. I think this is worth discussing, and there are obviously a lot of complexities to it. One thing that you might also consider is the ability to juggle or balance workload on enforcement matters. It appears in your closed session that some of the matters are related to past elections and reporting. To the extent that those don't bump up against a statute of limitations, putting some of those things off for a month or two in preference to things that are more current might be doable. And I don't know, because the public is not aware of the specifics of your complaints, how much juggling staff can do within those statutes of limitations and other considerations. So that might be something to discuss in a future meeting on this issue. Thanks.
Larry Bush, I'd like to endorse what Chair Rennie is saying. I noticed, I was sorry I was late, so I missed the conversation that you had about Lynette Sweet. But that is a case that goes to the 2010 election. And since that time, she was in election again in 2012. And so here we are in 2015, and it's 5 years after that complaint was being looked at. She's already gone through another election. She happened to lose that election. But it's a long time to go without a resolution of these questions. And as part of your look at that, I would like to suggest a clearer set of guidelines of when penalties are considered and whether you consider the past record of the person who's alleged to have violated something. At the FPPC, if you have repeatedly failed to file, for example, a Form 700, it multiplies the penalty when they finally do it. And I don't know what kind of research and background was done on Lynette Sweet, but she was the subject of a major FBI investigation for misuse of city money that had to be repaid when she was the board treasurer for the 3rd Street Economic Development Corporation. I know about that because I was the public affairs officer at HUD, and it was HUD that demanded the city return the money because it was misspent. She then went on to be on the Redevelopment Commission. If you look at her history, it is repeated failures to comply with disclosure rules. And if you look at her professional experience, she was a banker. So I don't know how you weigh these factors, but the fact that those factors exist should be part of what gets weighed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Hansen. I too concur with the recommendation from Chair Rennie. That looks at what happens in the future. We also have a situation right now in this current election where complaints have been filed that affect the election or could affect the election. As you know, because it was raised at the last meeting, although I couldn't be here because I was out of town, I have filed a complaint regarding the election in District 3, and I don't know if that complaint is going to be resolved before the election, but it's a complaint that, if not resolved, could result in one candidate not receiving public funds, which obviously would create an imbalance in the election. And so there's good reason to try to resolve that before the election, one way or another. And I don't know if that can be possible now, but I think that there are other complaints pending that have to do with this election, and it really does no good to resolve those complaints after the election. And it's unfortunate that we're in a situation that takes quite a long time to resolve complaints, and elections in the past have been determined in part by the amount of money that people receive through public financing. So I support the idea for the future. I also wonder if there's anything that can be done, and maybe not at this late date with a month to go before the election, but I would greatly suggest that if at all possible, complaints that have a bearing on this election at least be attempted to be resolved before the election. I'm intrigued by the idea that if they can't be resolved, maybe there's an announcement of some sort that there is a pending complaint so that people can make a decision in their voting with some fuller information. So I think it's going to take some creative thinking to deal with it in the next month, but I certainly support dealing with it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
It seems to me that a large part of the issue, if not the entire part of the issue, is the way the department functions and the way the workload is distributed, and I don't know what is involved in reorganizing the office so that these kinds of complaints take priority. These are very important, and they reflect on the commission perhaps more than anything else that we do. So I don't know, Mr. Maynardi, maybe you have some thoughts about how the workload can be redistributed and streamlined so that this issue gets addressed, at least administratively and procedurally. I mean, there are other issues involved in it as well. But it's really about the workload to a large extent, is it not?
Thank you, Jesse Minori. I actually have many ideas on this issue, but I don't want to get too far afield from sort of the topic of as to whether this is an issue. Get to the substance as opposed to raising this as an issue to be identified, because I think that's probably outside the scope. But I guess I would just say that I think everybody's touched on a lot of very good points. As Chair Rennie said, there are particular requirements by the charter, and there are some issues to be sort of dealt with in connection with that. But I think these are all great points and certainly part of a broader discussion on a lot of things.
Yeah, my suggestion was only that we put it on a future agenda where it is an item and the public can weigh in on it, and and the staff can give us some guidance as to what can and cannot be done. And it may be a item that awaits the appointment of a full-time executive director.
I think so.
But just put it in the back burner.
No.
All right. Item number 10, discussion and possible action regarding complaints received or initiated by the Ethics Commission, and then it lists 5. And
that sounds good.
In a possible closed session, I'll take a public comment on all matters on this, including whether or not we should meet in a closed session.
Eileen Hansen, I would just ask if it's possible, if you go into closed session, if it's possible to somehow inform the members of the public who would like to come back and hear if a resolution is made public approximately, well, when you come back, is there a way to inform members of the public that you're back in session?
I would think if we're talking 5, I suppose realistically 7:15 probably would be maybe optimistic.
But that would be enough. If people come back at 7:15, that would be early enough to hopefully be back before you get back.
I would think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Right.
We'll talk enough so that we'll be here at 7:15.
Okay.
Usually
thank
not
you.
a problem for us.
Thank you.
All right. Any comments by members of the commission as to whether or not we should go in closed session or a motion?
I move that we go into closed session.
Second.
Right. Any public comment before I call the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. The commission will go in closed session.
SF TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. assert Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television. SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
right, record to reflect we are back in open session. And is there a motion as to whether or not we should disclose the closed session deliberation?
I move that we not disclose our deliberations during closed session.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
I also will announce in open session that the Commission approved a settlement of ethics complaint number 13-100730. And the settlement agreement is a public document and will be posted on the Commission's website. Josh, do I have to read the whole thing?
No.
All right. That it also, at the closed session, the Commission approved the settlement agreement relating to Ethics Commission complaint 26-101021, and that settlement agreement is a public document and will be posted on the Commission's websites. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, all right, yes, thanks. I'm sorry.
Eileen Hansen, the two settlements that you announced, how do those relate to these 5 complaints that you just discussed in closed session?
They were 2 of the 5.
Can you say which of the 2 relate to those numbers? Because I didn't see those on here.
They relate to
1 and 2.
I think
right?
1 and 2, lines 1 and 2.
Okay. And can I also ask your reasons for not disclosing? Is the emotion not to disclose related to the discussion you had or to the resolution or lack thereof?
All 3 of those, the discussion and the lack or lack of resolution or resolution.
So can I maybe ask this a different way? So it sounds like you resolved 1 and 2. Would it be fair to assume that you did not resolve 3, 4, and 5, and thus they're ongoing?
It's okay to answer yes or no. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, whether we may have resolved them, but we're not disclosing the resolution at this moment, or they are ongoing.
Or they are ongoing?
Right.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.